In our mission presentation this year, you have met two faithful pastors, one serving in Burma, the other serving in the Bahamas. In the first film, you met a pastor's college graduate who headed the relief effort in Burma for victims of Cyclone Nargis. And in the second film, you met the pastor of Kingdom Life Church in Nassau, Bahamas, who has labored diligently as the sole pastor of that church for nearly 20 years. Both of these men graduated from the Sovereign Grace Ministries Pastors College, and during their time there, I had the privilege of getting to know them. These men and their families left their homes for an extended time to receive pastoral training in Maryland. This represents serious sacrifice. And I wanted you to meet them and learn about the difference they are making in advancing the gospel and building the local church, because their stories provide a glimpse into the larger mission of Sovereign Grace, to plant and build churches with the gospel for the glory of God. And for the next few minutes, I want to share with you a few other areas of expansion internationally and here in the United States. In 2009, we are planting 5 new churches, and we have more church plants scheduled for 2010. On the west coast of the United States, we recently deployed Toby Kurth to start Christ Church in urban San Francisco. That church began its Sunday meetings this past summer. Eric Terbetsky is planting a church in Orange County, California. In Arizona, Chris Dawkins planted Grace Church, a church in the West Phoenix suburb of Peoria. Grace Church was sent out by our existing church in Gilbert. In the east, Ken DeLage was sent from our church in Richmond to start Sovereign Grace Church in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And this fall, Kenny Lynch is planting Brandywine Grace Church in the suburbs of Philadelphia. This church represents the 9th church to be planted out of Covenant Fellowship. Give it up for Covenant Fellowship and their passion to advance the gospel through church planting. On the international front, Sovereign Grace has the privilege of serving churches in 21 nations. These nations include Germany, the Philippines, Mexico, Ethiopia, Sri Lanka, Uganda, India, Burma, and Bolivia. Lord willing, in 2010, we will plant our first church in Australia. Dave Taylor from Christ Church in Wales plans to lead a church planting team into the suburbs of Sydney. Still, much work remains for us to do internationally, which is why we continue to invest the largest portion of our annual mission fund in initiatives outside the U.S. In the past, those funds have enabled church plants, disaster relief, translation work, and many other initiatives. But because nearly a quarter of the world's population lives in regions unreached by the gospel, we can't simply stop there. Now more than ever, we are structured to extend our work overseas, and we are presently considering our first effort to plant a church among an unreached people group in Southeast Asia. I hope you don't grow familiar with or unaffected by these announcements each year. When we inform you about a new church plant, this means that in a new location, the gospel is being proclaimed, the church is being built, and lives are being transformed by the gospel. May we be increasingly amazed by these evidences of God's grace. What makes this expansion possible? The Pastors College makes this expansion possible. Each of the men I mentioned have graduated from our Pastors College. The unique pastoral training provided by the PC is behind our domestic and international expansion. It is a strategic and vital component of our mission. And just a few months ago, we graduated our 12th class. These 20 men were sent out across the U.S. One student returned to Mexico. Another student returned to South Korea. That graduate, Kang Song-wan, is working to plant a church in the capital city of Seoul. But as we celebrate these exciting advances, I am very aware how difficult 2009 has been for so many of you. We are living in the effects of what economists have called the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. And this downturn has affected each of us. Many of you have faced layoffs and cutbacks over the past year. You've been forced to reevaluate your budgets and to make difficult personal sacrifices. And the economic situation has touched Sovereign Grace as well. Over the past year, we were forced to make some very hard decisions, making cuts to our programs, having to lay off some members of our faithful staff. The effects of the downturn have been deeply felt and broadly experienced. Yet I'm confident that the Lord will continue to provide for the gospel to go forward and for his church to be built. Over the years, we have watched the Savior provide through you. You are our partners in this mission, and we are so grateful to God for you. So please receive my gratitude for the many ways you have sacrificed to support the mission. You have helped make these exciting ministry opportunities possible. And if you are able to continue giving financially this year, we would be deeply grateful. We are confident that God has much more for us to accomplish in the coming year, and we need your support. But if you find yourself in a period of financial difficulty, then I trust that you feel no obligation, absolutely no obligation to give to the Sovereign Grace Mission Fund. Actually, I want to seize this opportunity to say that your priority is to your local church. And this priority is both biblical, and this is the priority of Sovereign Grace. We exist to serve your local church. And if I could meet with each of you personally, this is what I would tell you. I would look you in the eyes and say, thank you for serving in your local church. Your humble, faithful service in your local church is contributing ultimately to the mission of Sovereign Grace. How you serve here in your local church makes possible what we do there, in the Bahamas, in Burma, in Australia, in South Korea, in Arizona, in California, in Pennsylvania. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 3 and verse 9, Paul wrote, "How can we thank God enough for you in return for all the joy we have in the presence of our God because of you?" Paul's gratefulness to God for the joy he experienced in his relationship with the Thessalonians was beyond expression. Paul found it impossible to thank God enough for them. And in this regard, I can relate to Paul. No thanksgiving I express to God for you is equivalent to the debt of gratitude I owe to God because of the joy you have given me. So on behalf of all those who serve you in Sovereign Grace and your pastors, I want to express our gratitude. Thank you. Thank you for supporting the mission of Sovereign Grace Ministries as we plant and build local churches, as we do our small part in spreading the gospel locally, globally, and transferring the gospel to the next generation to the glory of God.